This weekend, two princesses who have spent their entire lives trying to stay out of scandal will sit down with the King of England for what sources are calling crisis talks. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie are utterly horrified. They are very distressed. And according to insiders, they are about to make decisions that will determine not just their futures, but whether the York family name can ever be salvaged. Their father was arrested on his 66th birthday. Their mother's emails to a convicted sex offender have been made public. Their family name, according to royal experts, is now toxic. And King Charles, their uncle, has remained fiercely protective of them even as he watches his brother's decades of bad decisions finally catch up with him. This isn't just about damage control. This is about survival. Because Beatrice and Eugenie face a choice that no royal has faced in modern times. Do you publicly abandon your own parents to save yourself? Or do you stand by family and watch everything you've built burn to the ground? The crisis talks are happening now. The decisions being made this weekend will echo for the rest of their lives. This is the story of what led to this moment, and what comes next. The arrest that changed everything. Thursday, February 19, 2026. 8 a.m. M6 unmarked police vehicles arrive at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. 8 plainclothes officers step out. By 10:03 a.m. Thames Valley Police confirm what many thought would never happen. Prince Andrew has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The charge: allegedly sharing sensitive UK government documents with Jeffrey Epstein during his tenure as a trade envoy between 2001 and 2011. Andrew spent 11 hours in police custody before being released under investigation. He has vehemently denied any wrongdoing. But the damage was instant and irreversible. For the first time in modern British history, a senior royal had been placed under arrest. Taken into custody, photographed returning home, slouched in the back of a car, wide-eyed and unnerved. It happened on his birthday, and his daughters, who sources say are already in a state, received no warning, no preparation for the media storm that was about to engulf them. Within hours, King Charles issued a statement from Buckingham Palace: the law must take its course. We pledge our full and wholehearted support and cooperation with the investigation. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't defend Andrew. He didn't claim innocence. He pledged cooperation with the investigation. That statement told royal watchers everything they needed to know. The king was not going to protect his brother from the consequences of his actions. But what about Andrew's daughters? What about Beatrice and Eugenie, who have done nothing wrong themselves? That's where the crisis talks come in. Utterly horrified, The sisters' reaction according to the Daily Mail, citing a close family insider, Beatrice and Eugenie are described as utterly horrified by their father's arrest. They are very distressed, and are allegedly discussing next steps not only with each other, but with King Charles, who remains fiercely protective of them. Let's be clear about what utterly horrified means in this context. This isn't surprise. This isn't shock that their father was arrested. This is horror at seeing their worst fears confirmed in the most public, humiliating way possible. Royal author Ingrid Seward told the Mail, "All the doubts will have come crashing in, those holidays they had as children, the funds their father put in their bank account, all the lovely things they enjoyed." Then she said the devastating part: somewhere in their minds, they'll be wondering where that money really came from. Sadly, they're going to start doubting everything their father ever told them. Think about what that means. These are women in their mid-30s, with children of their own, suddenly questioning whether their entire childhood was built on money their father obtained through corrupt relationships with convicted criminals. Every family vacation, every gift, every opportunity they had growing up. Were any of them clean? Emily Andrews, royal editor at Woman magazine, said both sisters are aghast at what has surfaced about their mother in the Epstein files. The emails showed Sarah Ferguson making plans involving Epstein and her daughters after his release from prison in 2009. One email had Ferguson telling Epstein that Princess Eugenie, then 19, was on a shagging vacation. Your own mother discussing your sex life with a convicted sex offender. How do you process that? Royal biographer Robert Jobson told People magazine, "They are pretty torn because they believe their father. Just like the late Queen and Charles, Andrew told them all the same story, that he had done nothing wrong. They were only 19 or 20 years old at the time. If, at that age, your parents say we are going to see someone who's a friend of theirs, you don't think much about it beyond that. But they're not 19 or 20 anymore. They are adults, and the world is demanding they answer for their parents' choices. The impossible position royal expert Hilary Fordwich told Fox News Digital what everyone is thinking but few are saying out loud. While both daughters were loyal to their parents, they now face the untenable choice of whether salvaging their own futures must prevail, given even their maiden York name is so toxic. Read that again. Their maiden name, York, is so toxic that simply being called Princess of York is now a liability. Fordwich continued, they have been understandably distressed by the Epstein file contents regarding both their parents, but will no doubt create even more visible distance from their parents while perhaps still supporting them privately. That phrase, visible distance, is key, because royal experts are now openly advising these women to publicly abandon their parents. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams told The Telegraph bluntly, the York unit is toxic. Royal writer Andrew Loney told Woman magazine the only realistic path forward is to never be photographed with their parents. Never be photographed with your own parents. Let that sink in. The advice from multiple royal experts is that Beatrice and Eugenie must ensure they are never again publicly seen with the people who raised them, or their own reputations will be destroyed by association. But it gets worse. According to the Daily Mail sources, not only do the sisters stand to lose financially and in social status, but what trust is left in their father-daughter relationship is at stake. Financial loss, social status, but most importantly, the relationship itself. How much can a father-daughter relationship survive when one of you is arrested, the other discovers decades of lies, and the entire world is watching? The sisters are split. What has emerged since the arrest is that Beatrice and Eugenie are responding to this crisis in strikingly different ways. Eugenie made her choice months ago. According to insiders who spoke to the Daily Mail in January, there is no contact at all, nothing between Eugenie and her father. She did not visit him at Christmas. As co-founder of the Anti-Slavery Collective, a charity dedicated to fighting sex trafficking, Andrew's continued refusal to apologize to Epstein's victims reportedly left her deeply frustrated. Think about the moral contradiction Eugenie faces. She has built her professional reputation on fighting the very crimes her father's associate was convicted of facilitating. How do you continue that work while your own father refuses to apologize to the victims? You can't. Not while maintaining any association with him. So Eugenie cut contact. She moved to Portugal with her husband Jack Brooksbank. She's building a life as far from the scandal as she can get. Beatrice, on the other hand, has taken a softer approach, at least until now. She was photographed horse riding with Andrew just last month. She recently invited him to the christening of her younger daughter, Athena, though he chose to skip the gathering afterward. But according to sources, that loyalty is now under severe strain. Royal expert Hilary Fordwich told Fox News, Andrew has been dependent upon his daughters for emotional support, which to date hasn't wavered. But they are most likely not to appear publicly with him again. So here's where we are. Eugenie has already cut ties. Beatrice has been the loyal daughter, but that loyalty is crumbling. And both of them are about to sit down with King Charles to figure out what comes next. What King Charles can offer. So what exactly happens in these crisis talks? What can King Charles offer his nieces that makes this meeting necessary? First, protection. Sources say Charles remains fiercely protective of Beatrice and Eugenie. Despite everything their father has done, Charles has made it clear he does not blame them. That matters because Charles is now the ultimate authority on who gets royal protection, who keeps their titles, who appears at family events. Second, financial support. The Daily Mail reports the sisters stand to lose financially from this scandal. If their father's assets are seized, if their charitable work becomes impossible due to the toxic association, they may need help. Charles has the resources to ensure his nieces don't suffer economically for their father's crimes. Third, strategic advice. Charles has navigated royal scandals for decades. He knows how to manage public perception, how to rebuild reputations, how to draw lines between the guilty and the innocent. He can tell them what worked when he had to distance himself from scandals, what didn't work, what mistakes to avoid. But most importantly, Charles can give them permission. Permission to publicly distance themselves from their father without being accused of disloyalty to family. Permission to protect their own children from the toxicity. Permission to prioritize their futures over their past. Because that's what royal experts say they need to do, and having the king's blessing makes that decision infinitely easier. After decisions they face, so what decisions are actually being made this weekend? Decision 1. Public statements. Do Beatrice and Eugenie finally break their silence? Neither princess has said a word publicly since their father's arrest. Royal expert Ian Pelham-Turner told Fox News he isn't surprised by their silence. After watching their father's disastrous BBC interview in 2019, they know how quickly a camera can make things worse. But silence has its own costs. Without their own narrative, others control the story. Decision 2. Royal duties. Can Beatrice and Eugenie continue appearing at royal events? Can they stand beside King Charles at public functions without every photo becoming a referendum on whether they support their father? Hilary Fordwich says they will create even more visible distance from their parents while perhaps still supporting them privately. That means no more family photos. No more public appearances together. Total separation in the public eye. Decision 3. Financial independence. The sisters may need to completely sever financial ties with their parents. Any inheritance, any money their father put in their bank accounts, any gifts, all of it now carries the question, where did this money really come from? Royal author Ingrid Seward says they'll be wondering where that money really came from. If they want clean reputations, they may need to return everything. Decision 4. The York name. This is the most painful one. Hilary Fordwich says even their maiden York name is so toxic that it's damaging their futures. Can they drop through of York designation? Change how they are publicly known? Rebrand entirely? These are decisions that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Now they are being seriously discussed. Decision 5. The future. Emily Andrews believes the sisters will try to rebuild their brand by distancing themselves from both parents. But Andrew Loney is more pessimistic, suggesting the only realistic path is to never be photographed with their parents. Is that sustainable? Can you maintain any relationship with your parents if you can never be seen together? What the UK government is considering. While Beatrice and Eugenie are meeting with King Charles, the UK government is considering something unprecedented. James Murray, the government's chief secretary to the Treasury, announced, "The government is considering any further steps that might be required, and we're not ruling anything out." What he's talking about is removing Andrew from the line of succession entirely. Despite being stripped of his princely title in October and now facing a police investigation, Andrew remains 8th in line to the throne. Changing that would require new legislation, something that hasn't happened since King Edward VIII abdicated in 1936. If the government goes through with this, it would send a clear signal. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is being permanently separated from the royal family in law, not just in practice. And that affects his daughters. Because if their father is officially removed from the line of succession, if the government passes laws specifically to exclude him, the toxicity becomes even harder to escape. The question that matters. So here we are. This weekend. Crisis talks between two princesses and their king. Beatrice and Eugenie didn't choose this. They were teenagers when their mother took them to lunch with Epstein. They were children when their father became friends with him. But they are adults now. And the decisions being made this weekend will determine whether they have any future separate from their parents' past. Royal expert Hilary Fordwich summed it up. They may try to continue their charitable work, but those charities are unlikely to want to be associated with such a family. That's the brutal reality. Even if Beatrice and Eugenie do everything right from this moment forward, their family name may be so damaged that no organization wants their involvement. So what will King Charles tell them in these crisis talks? Will he advise them to publicly cut ties with their father? Will he offer financial support if they lose everything? Will he promise them continued roles in the royal family if they distance themselves completely? We don't know. These are private conversations. But we do know this. The York princesses are facing choices that will define the rest of their lives. Support your parents and watch your reputation burn. Or abandon your parents publicly and live with that decision forever. There is no good option. Every choice has devastating consequences. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams called it, "The York unit is toxic." The question isn't whether Beatrice and Eugenie will suffer from their parents' choices. The question is how much they'll lose trying to save themselves. This weekend's crisis talks with King Charles will determine the answer. And whatever decisions are made, they'll echo through the royal family for generations. Because if the king's own nieces have to publicly abandon their parents to survive, what does that say about how far the House of Windsor has fallen? What we know for certain, Beatrice and Eugenie are holding crisis talks with King Charles this weekend. Both are described as utterly horrified and very distressed. Eugenie had already cut contact with Andrew before the arrest. Royal experts say the York name is toxic and advise public distance from parents. King Charles remains fiercely protective of his niece's UK government considering removing Andrew from line of succession. Both sisters have made no public statements since the arrest. Sources say they face losing financially, socially, and emotionally. Subscribe if you believe children shouldn't pay for their parents' crimes, but should be free to protect their own futures. Comment below, should Beatrice and Eugenie publicly cut ties with their parents? Or is family loyalty more important than reputation?